President, I seek leave to move a motion relating to the 76th anniversary of the Nakba as circulated.
Is leave granted? Leave is not granted.
Pursuant to contingent notice of motion, standing in the name of Senator Waters, I move that so much of standing orders be suspended as would prevent me from moving a motion to provide for the consideration of a matter, namely a motion to give precedence to a motion relating to the 76th anniversary of the Nakba. Today marks the 76th anniversary of the Nakba. Nakba, which is the Arabic word for catastrophe, and Nakba Day, which is observed by Palestinians across the world. The Nakba was the violent displacement, dispossession, and ethnic cleansing of Palestinian peoples. This year, this particular day, is deeply solemn. Today's day of reflection is against the backdrop of the ongoing genocide in Gaza. Tens of thousands of civilians are dead. Millions are being actively and deliberately starved, dehydrated, and exposed to epidemic disease as the result of the choices and the actions of the State of Israel. The Israeli military, as we sit here, are dropping bombs and progressing their tanks through Rafah, one of the most densely populated places on the planet, due to the forced depopulation of northern Gaza. 1.7 million people, 75% of all Palestinians in Gaza, are now displaced. And this is the area the Israeli military are bombing, and this is the area through which Israeli tanks are moving. Millions of people have been forced into an area not much bigger than a Perth suburb under the guise of it being a designated safe area. Well, just last week, dozens were killed in that designated safe zone by the Israeli military. Shame. Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet have crossed every red line imaginable, and the Australian government has done nothing except to tell Israel not to go down this path. It is clear that the War Cabinet does not care for the weak words of this government, that they have no effect on restraining the bloodshed or devastation. It is time that the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister took real, meaningful action. I have been proud to be part of a movement in this place that has brought the people's protest into this place of power, this place where government officials and ministers could take action. The Australian government must cancel their contract with Elbit Systems. Until they do, they are aiding and abetting genocide. We must sanction Prime Minister Netanyahu and his war cabinet, who have made clear that they have no interest in respecting international law or the lives of innocent Palestinians. And crucially, we must expel the State of Israel's ambassador to Australia, because we cannot claim to be part or to uphold an international rules-based order only when it suits us. War crimes must be called out wherever they occur and whoever the perpetrators are. We are well over 6 months into this genocide. When is the Australian government going to wake up and actually do something about it? What will it take for you to see that the deaths of thousands of children, the levelling of whole cities is not a limited engagement, but the latest series the latest series of actions by a state which has been systemically and actively working to rid and to move the Palestinian people.
Senator Steele. John, I'm allocating the call to the Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Acting Deputy President. Acting Deputy President, this is another shameless and shameful Green stunt. It's another occasion where the Greens come in whilst indicating, of course, the great suffering of those people in Gaza at present, the great suffering and enormous tragedy of the loss of life, and that far too many innocent civilians have died in the period since October 7. The Greens do so in a way to seek to divide in this chamber, to seek to wedge, and with a completely one-sided approach. Does this motion call for the Iranian ambassador or representative to Australia to be expelled? No, it doesn't, notwithstanding the fact that Iran sponsored Hamas to undertake the October 7 slaughter of women, children, babies and others, notwithstanding the fact that Iran sponsors Hezbollah to maintain terrorist operations into the northern parts of Israel, notwithstanding the fact that Iran has been sponsoring the Houthi rebels to undertake attacks in the Red Sea, notwithstanding the fact that Iran has provided weapons to Russia to help and aid their attack on Ukraine. This is a completely lopsided, one-sided, biased resolution from the Australian Greens. It does not deserve the consideration nor the support of the Australian Senate. It overlooks the continued reality that Hamas continues to hold an estimated 130 hostages that they have held since the slaughter on the 7th of October last year of more Jews on a single day than at any time since the Holocaust. They've continued to hold those hostages, some who have died whilst being held hostage by Hamas. And in ceasefire negotiations, does Hamas agree to release hostages in return for a ceasefire? No, they don't. They stack all manner of other conditions upon that. Does Hamas agree to surrender their terrorist infrastructure and terrorist leaders in return for a ceasefire? No, they don't. They're happy to continue to hide behind innocent civilians in Gaza and to let those people die and suffer whilst they seek to protect their Hamas terrorist leadership and infrastructure capabilities. There is a pathway to a sustainable ceasefire. It would be for Hamas to unconditionally release its hostages, surrender its terrorist leadership and capabilities, and actually provide a genuine pathway for a ceasefire, for stability, for security, and for proper negotiations to occur towards a two-state solution that is negotiated, that, unlike what the Labor Party is taking Australia's policy position towards, tackles the difficult questions around borders, rights of return, security agreements and other factors that are essential and necessary for there to be enduring peace between Israeli peoples and the Palestinian peoples within the region. But we will not be party to this type of stunt by the Greens, to this type of one-sided approach by the Greens, nor to this type of divisiveness from the Greens.
Senator Hanson, if you are seeking the call, before you commence your statement, can I please ask that you either turn around the scarf that you're wearing or remove it altogether? It is against standing orders for you to have any slogans upon your dress. So can you please do that before I allocate the call to you? Thank you, Senator Hanson. Senator Hanson, you have the call.
Well, I totally agree with the opposition's comments with regard to this. This is a stunt, and it's unbelievable that what they're asking for, what they're saying in this notice motion, is basically to acknowledge the Nakba was the violent displacement, dispossession and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people. I just want to draw attention to what's happened since 1948 till 2018. We talk about ethnic cleansing or displacement of people, especially the Jewish people. In Egypt and in Algeria, I'll start with Algeria, in 1948 there was 140,000 Jews there. Today, 50. Egypt, 75,000, now 100. In Iraq, 135,000, now 10. Lebanon, 5,000, now 100. Libya, 38,000, none now. Morocco, 265,000, now there was 2,150. Syria, there was 30,000, now 100. Tunisia, 105,000, now 1,050. And Yemen, 63,000, now 50. The Jews displaced. Bethlehem was in 1950 80% Christian. Today, 80% Muslim. And that's over a period of 70 years. So talking about genocide and displacement, the Jewish people have been treated like this for centuries, thousands upon thousands of years, by different races and countries. And it breaks my heart to see that same thing happening in our country with the Jewish students who are mistreated on university campuses, to see that what is happening on our streets in Australia with the Palestinian protest marches, I think it is disgusting and should not be allowed. The way I see what my country is coming to now breaks my heart. These people, regardless of the race, and it's not a race, it's a religion, of what they are now have to face in this country, it's un-Australian. This is an absolutely stunt by the Greens, and I get so annoyed to call it out for what it is, and the Labor Party, for their pathetic attempt and to allow the Palestinians onto the UN Convention is appalling, absolutely appalling to support that, which I'll be talking about that more. What I will say is that why can't we just live in peace? You know, you have the problems that is happening in Israel and Palestine. We're not going to solve that. That has to be solved. But you can't solve it with a country, with Hamas, that is actually a terrorist organisation. You can't solve it by your stunts here in the Senate. That's not good enough. That's not what the Australian people want. If you really care about the Australian people, what's happening, then don't support these protest rallies that are happening in Australia. Support the people based on the violence that they are facing on our own streets in this country. The youth, you talk about radicalisation. This is all geared at destroying the Western way of life. This is all about destroying our democracy. That's what this is all about. It's not about worrying about what's happened in Palestine. This is a political stunt. And it's been driven by the Labor and the Greens to actually support those Muslims in this country purely for the vote. That's what it's about. It's got nothing to do with what's happening over there. This has gone on for centuries, the fight between Israel and Palestine and the Jewish people. But the Jews have come out here to this country for peace, for a new way of life. Why are they being treated the way that they are? I just don't understand it. Why can't people live in peace in this country? Why can't we stand up and support that? Why do you keep continuing to support the Palestinians when what we do in this place has got nothing to do with it? You're one-sided, very one-sided in your whole attitude with the whole thing with Palestine and Israel. But I do support the Jewish, and I support them and having the right to stand up and fight for their own country, because if anyone was to invade our nation, where would you stand? What would you do? I can't see the Greens standing up and fighting for this nation if anyone attacked us. And those poor people whose lives they were living peace and their whole life was destroyed. What about them? Never hear about that.
Minister.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Well, the conflict in the Middle East is causing deep distress for many Australians. That is particularly the case for those that have a connection to the region and those who have loved ones who are directly impacted. In Australian government engagements...
Sorry, Minister. Senator Waters.
Point of order, Acting Deputy President. You instructed Senator Hanson to remove an article of clothing that had a slogan on it, and she's just replaced it now that the snappers are in the gallery. She's flouting your ruling, and I ask you to ask her to comply with it.
Senator, can you just give me 1 second? Senator Hanson, there was an instruction for you to remove the scarf with a visible slogan on it, which is against standing orders. So again, I would request that you either turn the scarf around or remove the scarf or leave the chamber. Senator Hanson, you don't have the call. I have given the instruction, and so I would either like you to remove the scarf. It's not a debate. Remove the scarf or to leave the chamber. Thank you. Thank you. Minister.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. In our engagements, the Foreign Minister presses for progress towards peace in her engagements with counterparts in the Middle East and with partners in Europe, Canada, Japan, the United Kingdom, the United States, and in our region and in multilateral forums. And as demonstrated by our vote in the United Nations General Assembly, we are using Australia's voice to advocate for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire and a pathway out of this conflict. Unfortunately, this motion does not engage with these difficult, sensitive, important questions in the same constructive terms. In fact, this motion is drafted to be absolutist and to be divisive, and it is another example of the Greens political party seeking to divide, taking absolutist positions on a complex issue in an effort to win votes. They are putting their own interests ahead of social cohesion, and I'll make the point here, which I've made earlier and others on this side of the chamber have made. We gain very little by reproducing the conflict here, by talking past at one another, by shouting at one another, by insisting on respective absolutes. There are too many politicians in Australia who are manipulating legitimate, heartfelt community concern for their own ends. And the Greens political party is willing to purposely amplify disinformation and exploit distress in a blatant and cynical play for votes. And for once, I would like them to look at the national interest and whether their actions serve community cohesion or threaten it. And at the same time, we see Mr Dutton reflexively dismissing concern for Palestinians as Hamas sympathising. He's asked about the humanitarian catastrophe in Rafah. He can't even bring himself to mention civilians in the answer. Australians know that our country needs mature leadership for serious times. Australia's diplomacy and decisions are guided by the principles of peace and seek to advance a lasting peace, which is what we have always said that we will do. There is a need to acknowledge the real trauma on all sides and to acknowledge each other's humanity and to come together as peacemakers through history have done. And that is the approach that we take, and it's the approach that we urge community and political leaders in Australia to embrace. So we don't support the suspension, we don't support the motion, and I move that the question be put.
So the first question is that the question now be put. Is a division required? Those of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The noes have it? Sorry. The question is now that the suspension of standing orders moved by Senator the question be put? Yes. Thank you. So that the question be now put. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against? I think the noes have it. Yeah. Division required. Ring the bells for 4 minutes. Lock the doors. The ayes shall move to the right of the chair, the noes to the left of the chair. I appoint Senator Ciccone for the ayes and Senator McKim for the noes. The result of the division is the ayes 30 and the noes 11. The question is resolved in the affirmative. The question now is that the suspension of standing orders moved by Senator Steele-John be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against? Aye. The ayes have it. Division required. Ring the bells for 1 minute. One minute. Lock the doors. The ayes should move to the right of the chair, the noes to the left of the chair. I appoint Senator McKim for the ayes and Senator O'Sullivan for the noes. The result of the division is ayes 11, noes 30. The question is resolved in the negative.